Thank you, Sarah. So in case you're on the wrong flight, this is the SpiritJam webinar. And I'd like to invite you to come and take a journey with us. What is your big, audacious dream for RE? That's something that the minister I worked with asked me. And that was the compelling question that started me thinking about what SpiritJam might turn into. So we named it SpiritJam, and really, essentially, it's a new model for religious education. There are two components: paid lead teachers and monthly themes. And the disclaimer is that we're all going to do whatever we want anyway. So do with this what you want and take it and run with it. So the introduction is myself. I'm Katie Covey. I'm the former director of what we called the School of the Spirit. That was the change we made when we went into SpiritJam. I worked at Boulder Valley UU Fellowship in Lafayette, Colorado until last May, when I retired and I became a consultant and an author. And Katie Seipert is here, and I've invited her to be our special guest. Hey, Katie, because she did a presentation with me last year and started SpiritJam in her church. So she's going to be our most valuable addition. And Sarah, of course, our wonderful Pacific Western Region Congregational Life staffer. So first off, I want to give a big thank you, a virtual chalice pizza cookie to the Loretta 21st Century Grant for project support to develop this in our first year. So the start of SpiritJam. Lydia Ferranti Roseberry, our minister, said to me, "What is your big audacious dream, Katie?" I was having a horrible time recruiting teachers. I've been a DRE for 33 years, and it got worse and worse and worse. Trying to recruit from families who were overstressed to full-time working parents, and they're fulfilling the roles as treasurer. I couldn't ask the treasurer to come and teach RE as well. So I had no teachers for the 4th through 6th grade class. The board denied my first off-the-cuff proposal. Hey, can't we just hire somebody to just stick them in there? And they said, no, we've got a budget. You can't just do this. Then they came back to the RE committee in January, which was our budget time. And the treasurer of the church came. He was very apologetic. They didn't like denying me and putting me in this tough situation. And he said, Katie, think big. So I had the minister and the treasurer of the church saying, think big. Well, that's a dangerous combination, because I knew that Sophie Faz in 1952 had a dream of paid faculty for religious education. And that's where I started basing SpiritJam on. So what I wanted to accomplish was to align religious education with the thematic ministry that we had been doing for 3 years. The problem was that with thematic ministry, I could not morph the things happening in RE fast enough to meet the theme without really intense curriculum development. I wanted more multi-generational opportunities. I wanted to create a paid faculty. I wanted to be flexible and creative, and I wanted to free up the energy of the parents. Those were my goals. So, what did we get with a paid faculty? We got deeper exploration of the theme. These are the 3 people who are the SpiritJam faculty right now. We expanded the family energy that they could bring to the congregation. They could bring their passions and not have to be given a curriculum and stuck in a classroom. Some people love that, and I will never deny that opportunity to them. Sometimes they would do it under duress, and they'd run when they'd see me walking down the hall. A paid faculty provides consistency each Sunday. If you can imagine what it's like to have a Wednesday staff meeting, developing the Sunday theme, and then coming in and having these people all prepared to offer whatever we had developed. I had teacher meetings when I had volunteers of, if I was lucky, I could get them in 2 hours at the beginning of the year in September and 2 hours if I was lucky to come in January. We met every week for 2 hours, so I had thousands of % more time with the faculty. It adds young adult energy, which was a valuable thing, and you can imagine how the children loved seeing their 3 teachers each Sunday. What we did was once a month invite the congregation to come and brainstorm on the monthly theme to create the jams. So you can see in back, we've been writing down all these ideas, and there were the people who came at that time. Some of them never came to RE, but they loved coming to the co-creator jams. And this is something Katie's bringing to us, and I invite her to tell us about this slide.
So this slide is just an example of kind of the planning process. So our SpiritJam faculty is very much set up in the same way. I have 3 SpiritJam faculty people, and we do a monthly co-creator lab with kind of an all-come invitation. And we've had kids come and participate, parents, people who have never interacted with children before. And to capture all of that information, we have 3 different whiteboards going on at one time, plus notepads where people are taking notes. And I think we'll have an opportunity to do some of that brainstorming process. But I just wanted to show you sort of the messiness of what this planning looks like, that moves us toward a really, really clear and concise and beautiful Sunday morning. Where everybody knows what they're doing and everybody is kind of hitting the target of making sure that we are teaching to the theme of each month. So that's what this shows. And you'll see there are 2 separate SpiritJam planning boards that kind of give you a grid to fit the different jam sessions into based on whatever the minister is talking about that particular date, that particular Sunday morning. Okay, I'm gonna...
Thank you, Katie. That's very familiar too. That's exactly what we did too. So within the SpiritJam structure, we always invite youth and congregants to come in as guest leaders. This is a slide of Liliana Olivo, who was 15. She came to me and she said, Katie, you know, I've been thinking about fair trade chocolate and Hershey's chocolate and the differences. Could I do a jam? And of course, my answer was, could you? So for compassion as the monthly theme, she came in and offered an eating jam, and she talked about where chocolate came from. And to have a 15-year-old teacher was just wonderful. Another teacher we had was Lucas, 12 years old and the best origami teacher I've ever experienced. And all the people came and sat at his table to learn how to make the peace cranes that December. And what a wonderful, affirming experience for him to be a teacher and leader. We also have some storytellers in the congregation. These 2 Southern gentlemen love to come in and tell the stories, Papa Wynn and Ray Hamilton. We offered a knitting jam on the suggestion of there's a group of 3 women who are very quiet in our congregation. And I don't think I'd heard her say more than 3 words. And she came to me and very quietly said, would you like us to do a knitting jam? And when they offered it actually 2 Sundays so that projects could get worked on between, and whole families went in there, the mother, the father, and the 2 kids, to be taught how to knit. So the theological foundations of SpiritJam. Essentially, for me, if you're going to use the word God, God is creativity. It's the creative impulse in the universe, and SpiritJam certainly is the creative impulse personified. We also did in Boulder Valley what we called just-in-time ministry. This is something that the big box stores have implemented. It's a marketing strategy, but it means that you can be as responsive as you can to co-create curriculum. You can create a curriculum that's flexible, that captures whatever ideas are going on in the congregation, and that doesn't mean you're planning 6 months in advance. I used to go to the board meetings and say to them, RE is like an ocean liner. You can't change course because you've got all these volunteers who've put in their calendar that they're teaching November 22nd, and they're teaching this certain lesson. And if I have to change that, that means like a 12-step process. So SpiritJam means just-in-time ministry. You also can create and use a permission-giving board. Traditionally, a board of trustees is charged with conserving the organization. So they become conservatives, and that tends to mean they're very suspicious of change. The leadership and Lydia of our church decided they wanted to be a permission-giving board. And they started saying yes to things, SpiritJam being one of them.
Katie, can I just interrupt briefly to say that I showed that slide to my board when I was giving them the spiel about why I thought that SpiritJam would really benefit our church. And the entire board just lit up at the idea of being able to say yes to something new and fresh. So it was almost as if I was giving them permission to be a permission-giving board, and then they gave me permission to try this new and exciting thing. I would just encourage people to use that language when approaching the board or whoever it is that you need to pass this idea by.
Oh, wonderful. Thank you. Thank you, thank you. So how do we do this co-creator lab? What we did in the co-creator lab was to bring in the SpiritJam matrix. These are the 10 different things that we wanted to see if we could cover with the jams. So we would say, okay, what UU identity and UU core stories should we teach? Should we not be missing? What stories are in world religions? What's in kid and youth culture? What kinds of things can we use the senses for in sensory play? What music goes with the theme? What life issues go with the theme? What talents do we have in the congregation that might expand the theme? What sermon topics could we dovetail with? What justice and service projects could we use to expand the theme? And how can we use our knowledge of multiple intelligences to expand the theme? So after a general brainstorm of about 10 minutes, where we had those messy pads, just like Katie Cyper has, we would then go back after a period of silent reflection and say, okay, let's look at the matrix and make sure we're hitting all these possibilities. The kinds of jams we came up with: nature jams, tinker jams, that's the engineering, those little children with the marshmallows and toothpicks. Architecture would fall under a tinker jam. Body jams, story jams, music jams. Plus we did specific things like an Enso jam, Now, the picture down in the lower right is of a meditation practice. The Enso is the Zen circle. And when we had this person who was a Zen practitioner, she said, let's do one long line, and that's a horsehair brush. And she said, you take a breath and you brush it down, and then you hand it to the next person who takes a breath and brush it down. You can see all the different ages of people outside doing that. We did a Harry Potter wand jam, a mandala jam, a dance jam, and a donkey jam. And Katie needs to tell us about this. This is her slide. I think that's wonderful.
So we have a congregant who has several donkeys and is designing some anti-bullying curriculum based on the way of the donkey. So when a donkey is faced with a new or uncertain circumstance, they do not do fight, they do not do flight, they stop, they stay still, they check out their situation, they congregate with their friends, they say no loudly when they need to. So she brought in Dominique the donkey for the kids to meet and learn about how they can stand up for one another and learn the way of the donkey. So super
I want to go.
It's so much fun.
And you see what you can create without having a curriculum. That's what's so cool about this.
Yeah.
Love it. So you folks now, I've got a little chat box assignment. What jams might you brainstorm? And I picked the theme of rebirth since we're going to be experiencing that pretty soon here. We've got the spring equinox and we've got Easter, all those things coming up. So add your ideas to the chat box. And what I'm going to do is go to the next slide so you can see the matrix. So what might you come up with on the theme of rebirth that is music? What might you come up with in kid and youth culture? World religions. Can you think of a core story in our UU heritage which you'd want to share in your congregation?
Jennifer Smith writes Persephone. Yes.
Ooh, yeah.
Persephone and Demeter, the ancient Greek myth.
Mm-hmm. And sensory with that would be eating pomegranates.
Yes. Although I think they were in season like 4 or 5 months ago.
Yeah, yeah, it's true.
But yes,
pomegranate juice.
Yeah,
they said.
exactly. Eating some kind of a seed.
Mm-hmm.
Sensory bulb jam, planting bulbs.
Ooh.
Pamela Green. Oh, wow. That's great.
Are we happy?
Perhaps Julie Taylor suggests perhaps a ritual from our pagan members.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. There you go. Good idea, Julie.
Katie Seifert, we are planning to make seed balls with the children.
Mm.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I think of the phoenix from the flame rising. And I wonder too about some of the stories of our UU congregations that burned down and were reborn, or that some crisis happened to the congregation and they nearly dwindled and then they came back alive. Jillian Post says, experiencing the earth, having a sensory experience by digging in the dirt and planting flowers or vegetables.
Mm-hmm.
Allison Jacks, having an Easter jamboree.
Mm-hmm.
Julie Taylor says bigmyth.com has amazing videos of different creation stories. You can watch those looking for various rebirths.
Mm-hmm.
Lily Rappaport suggests Buddhist teachings on reincarnation.
Oh, yeah.
Mhm.
That's world religions from our
Yeah. For studying what it means to be born again, for born again Christians.
Yep. I think with older children, I would also do something on the resurrection and crucifixion. I'm doing a bunch of middle school work now, and I realize that they're old enough to hear that crucifixion resurrection story and put it in its cultural context.
Do we have any other ideas that folks want to put in the chat? Okay, I think we're done. Back to you, Katie.
All right. Thank you all. So here's a typical Sunday morning. And I'm going to invite Katie Seibert to do this with me. So in our church in Boulder Valley, we started with a sharing circle. We gave up our For All Ages time. And it wasn't really a giving up, because what we did was add in multi-generational services and increase them to once a month. So we balanced it. And we started with our own sharing circle. Miss Ari, the preschool teacher, right there, came in, and she was a singer and guitar player. What a gem of a faculty member. And we had 2 jams going. And looks like Katie Seibert.
Oh, yeah. So in Eugene, we have kept our Story for All Ages time. And we tried just starting with a sharing circle, and there was an outcry. So we start in the sanctuary all together with Story for All Ages, and then have a children's recessional or a SpiritJam recessional, where we're all sung to the SpiritJam opening circle time. And then our morning looks very similar to what Katie is describing here. We start with a sharing circle. We sing an opening song, Oh, I Believe. And then we'll describe the jam sessions that are on offer. We typically offer 3 jam sessions, 1 that's a little longer, and then 2 where kids can switch between. And then after all of those end, as Katie notes here, we regather for a closing circle before parents pick up. Great. Yeah.
So our sharing circle ritual, there's our 2 sharing circles we're talking about. In Boulder Valley, we ring the singing bowl, and we say these certain words which are posted. To this quiet place of beauty, we come from busy things, pausing for a moment for the thoughts that quiet brings. I'm a fan of rote memorization, so that when you learn it by heart, it can go into your heart. We light our chalice with the same words every Sunday. We take an offering, which is the same as our adult half plate recipient, and we have another little set of words we say. We sing. Well, actually, that's Eugene sings, from you I receive, to you I give, together we share, from this we live, which is a wonderful thing to do. And then the oldest child or youth in the room counts that collection, announces it during joys and concerns, and takes it to the office to be added to the adult offering plate. That's one of our leadership roles that we give to the youth. We share music. So for October, say, our theme was letting go. And in the co-creator lab, it was obvious that the theme from Frozen, Let It Go, had to be one of our songs. Everyone with children said, go for it, we have to do this. So she taught that. We also sang, I Know This Rose Will Open, and Music Alone Shall Live, for letting go. We have a meditation. Always we are lucky enough to have Naropa students as faculty. And then at the end, we say, may we practice our sixth principle and help bring peace and justice to our world. We do joys and concerns. We add rocks instead of light candles because I set the fire alarm off in the middle of the church service one day with all the candles. We'll just move right on. And then we extinguish the chalice, carry it forward into the dawning day. Then we go into all of the jams, and this is another one of Katie's slides, and I wanted to share with you these wonderful jams that they're doing.
So this slide is a sample of what our minister says while we're still all together in the sanctuary. So she typically will say something like, each Sunday, people of all ages are invited to join in an active worship and learning experience through participating in SpiritJam. And then she'll describe the jam sessions that we have on offer for that Sunday. And then we go into the story for all ages so people have some time to kind of process what the different jam sessions are. Last week we had a physics jam, a traffic jam, and a lunch sack jam. And we had 6 adults that came back to participate in those various jam sessions. So the minister describing and inviting people to participate really has increased, I'm sorry, that's my phone, really has increased the level of adult participation in our various jam sessions. After the Story for All Ages, either myself or the minister will say, now is the time in our service when we take a small bit of our community flame back with us to SpiritJam. Please join us in singing the SpiritJam recessional. The words are printed in your order of service. And so that signals the time for anyone who wants to participate. And as I said, we have people, you know, anywhere from kindergarten all the way up through, you know, people in their 60s, 70s, 80s who come back to participate in SpiritJam each Sunday.
Right. And I did see Pamela raised her hand. Pamela, you want to unmute yourself and we'll ask a question.
Am I unmuted?
There you are.
Oh, yay. So is the SpiritJam running then for consecutive with the rest of the service, so people are choosing to leave the big church, as we say with the kids, the main service, to come back to SpiritJam?
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah.
And I was so lucky that our minister said to me one day when I sort of looked at her about that, she said, you know, they're coming into community, whether they want to go to big church or come back to SpiritJam, it's all fine. And I was so affirmed when she said that.
That was my minister's response as well. It's been an incredibly supportive environment at our church and has really sort of dissolved that barrier between big church and kids church, because it's a much more fluid space. People are able to move between those spaces. I see a question from Julie Taylor about concerns with predators meeting children in the jam sessions. In my experience, we're able, because we have paid teaching staff, we can identify people who would be of concern, someone who's turning up every week to do the jam session with the kids, someone who's behaving in unusual ways. So we have, because we have paid staff who are trained and as teaching staff, that hasn't been a concern or an issue coming up. Katie, do you want to talk about that?
We had the exact same thing. Once you have a faculty who's already vetted, background checked, and they get all this wonderful training each week, and I develop their classroom management techniques, all those things, then the parents aren't so worried about that kind of grooming behavior from a volunteer. So I feel that SpiritJam is actually a safer way than inviting, hey, who wants to be a volunteer teacher and fill in right now, you know? So, cool. Good question though, Julie. Thanks for asking it.
And then Katie, if you want to move to the next slide, I'll just show a sample insert. So this is an insert that we have created in Eugene that goes into the order of service at the beginning of each month so that people can bring it home and check out what the jam sessions are. And then we offer, you can see on the back, there's an advertisement to come to our co-creator lab time. And this grid is really helpful. It's kind of a translation from that whiteboard that you saw a little earlier to a little nicer view of what the various jam sessions are. It's something that can easily be put on someone's fridge, and kids can be looking forward to various jam sessions. So we're at a point now in our planning where our week is pretty much, or our month is pretty much planned the month ahead of time. What's nice about it though is, as Katie said earlier, if something happens in the culture or, you know, for example, we had a safety pin jam back in November, and that was a really important thing to be able to have that flexibility and make that move kind of on a, you know, on a dime in order to respond to the need that we saw arising in our church, in our kid community.
Mm-hmm. Lovely.
We have a couple of questions which we can ask now or hold. What's your preference, Katie?
Oh, let's go for it.
Okay, go for it. And with the questions.
Questions.
There's a question about how do we ensure that there are 2 adults in each jam each week, and is there a volunteer?
Good question. I'm going to stop sharing so Katie and you can see us just for a bit. There we go. Hi. So how do we ensure that we have two adults in each jam session? Because we vetted our teachers, we actually changed our safety procedures.
Yeah.
And we said that we don't need to have 2 volunteer teachers in every classroom. So what we have is hired teachers who are responsible people, and we just didn't feel the pressure anymore.
And this is Sarah, and I'll add, in other congregations that I've experienced where they've had paid teachers, it's been a partnership between a paid teacher and a volunteer teacher. So there continue to be volunteer teachers, but they have such a happier time volunteering because they're working with someone who is really on top of it, has good skills, has good pay, and then they can get into the joy of teaching. They don't have the same insecurities about, oh, do I know enough about our faith to teach this? Or will I be able to hold the attention of a bunch of 7-year-olds or something like that? So I've experienced it in 2 different congregations, one where I was the minister and one where I was a participant, and it works well.
So similarly to what both Katie and Sarah have said, we have also changed our policy at the church that if it is a paid, vetted, background checked staff person, that person is held accountable to that kind of higher standard, because we're not talking about volunteer teachers. So I have 3 SpiritJam staff who teach each Sunday morning. We started out trying to do it myself and 2 paid staff people, and that was exhausting. So I would not recommend that to you. But with 3 paid staff, it means that I'm able to go between the classrooms and check on what's happening in each classroom and offer help and support where needed when we don't have a volunteer adult in each space. What we've found is that plenty of adults show up on Sunday morning, so it's not really an issue. There is consistently a parent helper or a volunteer in each classroom who is there kind of just ready to be of service how they're needed. So
Nice.
Excellent. And the other question is a quick one.
Yes.
What's the average attendance for your jams?
Katie, go for it.
yeah, we have somewhere between 30 and 40 kids each Sunday. So any given jam session has 10, 12, 13 kids in it. It is wild and raucous and super fun. The other thing that we have seen is a drop in middle school attendance. And so we're currently creating a middle school program that will have high school leadership to help scaffold middle schoolers so that they feel more comfortable participating in jam sessions as teachers for the younger kids. So by the end of this year, we should have a really well scaffolded program that incorporates all ages really nicely.
Yeah, and we had some of the same thing happen with our middle schoolers too. It was a little intimidating to get stuck with the little kids. That's sort of how they saw it. But with leadership intentionality, you can work around it. I'm glad Katie's working on that. All right, I'm going to go back to sharing the screen. Let's see if we can get right back to where we started. There we are. Okay, so here's a little bit deeper into what the jams would look like. Here was the Hope Jam. We made mini care packages that congregants could hand to the homeless people. So as they came in, the stuff was set out that had been donated, and the kids started by saying, what would a person without a home, what would they need? And what might they be able to carry or not? And there they made the bags. They made over 115 bags, and then those bags were distributed to their families, but then also anyone in the congregation could take them too. This is Katie Seipert, sorry.
I hit the wrong button. Sorry about that. Yeah. So this is, we had a month about suffering a couple of months ago. That was the theme for the month. And so as SpiritJam staff, we came up with a game, an Inside Out game based on the movie. So coming back to kid culture, and the way that the game was played is a child took out a random colored bead, and that bead corresponded, the color of that bead corresponded to one of the emotions that are represented in Inside Out. So there's joy, sadness, disgust, anger, and fear. And then they got to do whatever was written on the back of the card. So there were either actions or a little skit that they would do that sort of embodied that emotional space for the kids. And they got to practice acting those out and working through those emotions together. It was a super fun game. And so these are pictures of them doing it.
All right, what's the next one? We offered a drum jam as part of Compassion, and Michael, the SpiritJam teacher at the time, was a drummer, and he asked the group to reflect on the rhythms of our hearts. And what was really interesting is he just asked them to start drumming, and so there's just random cacophony, and then pretty soon there was a rhythm created, and he said, look what's happening. You are responding to each other's rhythms, and now we're making one rhythm. It was very beautiful. So in our final gathering, we get back together, and it depends on when the big church is going to let out. That's the trick. So either we would say, here's some of the questions we'd ask them about reflection, which was your most favorite part, what was the most challenging, what will you remember, what made you think the most, or one word about the morning. And then if we had more time, we would sing those theme songs again. And then if we had more time, we would usually go outside and play, because we had a playground just right out the door of our sharing circle room. So doing the money, I thought folks might be interested, because you might think this costs $100 million, and when we're talking about paid teachers, And this was the situation in the congregation when Jamil and Emily and I were the staffers. There was me as a 30-hour-week DRE. We had Emily was the 15-hour-week youth coordinator. Jamil was the 10-hour-week RE assistant. And we had 2 high school, preschool caregivers. I spent about 30% of my time recruiting and supporting volunteers. And Jamil, the RE assistant, spent about 80% of his time supporting and filling in for volunteers. He's now Reverend Jamil Scott, and he's in Woodinville, Washington. But really, he ended up being a teacher so often, it was getting ridiculous. So what we did was we added 1 SpiritJam leader of 6 hours a week. That cost us $4,000 per academic year. And in our congregation, we raised that with our day camp proceeds plus donations to the School of the Spirit. So we were fairly lucky to have that already in place. All it took was a board action, because that several $1,000s, $4,000, $5,000 that we made off of day camp each year used to go into the general fund. Now we asked it to be dedicated to the SpiritJam leader position, and the board voted that that was okay. It created a faculty. We were able to hire an adult. Miss Ari is a trained early childhood teacher with music specialist background. And she really wanted to be part of the SpiritJam faculty and do the jams in an early childhood way. So that cost us an extra $400 to bring her into the co-creator lab so she could be part of that and give her some planning time. It created sustainable positions. We combined the youth coordinator and the RE assistant positions for a 25-hour-a-week position with no change to the budget. So for myself, I had my 30 hours a week, and that 30% of time I was spending recruiting the teachers then went to bring me up to be a lifespan religious education person with also responsibility for the multi-generational programs. It didn't cost them anything. No change to my salary. So, SpiritJam, the goal is to be more multi-generational. And just like Katie Seipert's congregation, we had 1 to 6 adults join SpiritJam that first year, every week. Then we also incorporated, as I said before, monthly services, so that instead of 4 ages, we did September, we had a water service and a slide, and that's our minister going down the slide. Then there's the list of our multi-gen services. The October was Day of Remembrance for remembering the folks who've died. November was a sharing of breads. December is the no rehearsal Christmas Eve pageant. February, we did something about the UU stories in Love and Mission. Then there's Easter, then there's Youth Sunday, then there's Flower Communion. In January, we did something different that has continued. I call it Why Be Protestant, which means why are we still doing chairs in a row listening to a preacher? And Lydia, the minister, said, let's try it. So the first Sunday of the new year, there was no sermon. It was all SpiritJam all the time. So in the sanctuary, there was a labyrinth and Tibetan bells that year. Other years they had dances of universal peace. Then there were jams that you could go to anytime. We had double services. You could go to any of 2 or 3 or even 4. You could take a winter walk around a nearby lake. There was a practitioner offering yoga. This slide is a picture of the yoga class. You can see how intergenerational it was. There was a Zen Doodles and there was a chat room. And Eugene has a little comment there. You want to talk about that too?
So because of our Story for All Ages time at the beginning of our Spirit Jam Sunday, it means that the time that we have for jam sessions is a little bit more constricted. So we do 2 15-minute jam sessions with about 5 minutes for transition in between, and 1 35-minute jam session, which is typically designed toward an older audience. So that's where we've tried, like a meditation sit or yoga jam, things that are designed to be more attractive to older participants. But kids, of course, in the younger set can also join and choose those 35-minute jam sessions.
Wonderful. Wonderful. The other things that were offered at the mini retreat, there was a soul collage person, and again, you can see how integrated the generations are. So Spirit Jam is not the old paradigm. There are co-creator labs that mix people up. There's young adult energy, tech, and creativity. Parents are freed up to serve in other ways. Spirit Jam offers opportunities to congregants who never set foot in RE. That was one of the most astonishing things for that first year of Spirit Jam. And it transforms the way we do church. I want to go back up to the parents are freed up to serve in other ways. What Spirit Jam allowed our congregation to do was for each person to share their passions without all the baggage of coming in and having to know how to manage a classroom or to commit to a 12-week semester or whatever past things we needed to do to be a volunteer teacher. If they loved the teaching, and in Spirit Jam we had some adults who would come back quite a bit, there they are, they're ready and they can share their passion for teaching with the help of these lead teachers. So the future. One of the things that came out of some visioning work we did with the board was that now that we saw what Spirit Jam is like, maybe we'd like to be a center for spiritual exploration and justice for multiple ages. And I'm very excited on what's going to happen to the congregation. As you know, part of my Laredo Code of Ethics is that I can't be part of the Boulder Valley Church since I left after a 15-year tenure. So I'm watching from a distance, and I think I'm very hopeful for what they're going to be doing. So here's a little more on Spirit Jam specifically. The website is spiritjam.info. I run a little blog and general information. And the Boulder Valley congregation uses the Soul Matters Sharing Circle themes, the monthly themes, and I know there's tons of possibilities out there. The next slide is stuff that Katie's sharing with us, and maybe you can talk a little bit about that.
So these are all resources that I also put in the chat box to the side, and that we'll also share with you along with the resources that Katie Covey just showed you on the previous slide. We have a Spirit Jam info series of web pages at our church's website. So that's that first link. There's our schedule. I showed you the grid a little earlier in tonight's webinar, and you can also go online to see it. And that gets updated every month. And then I've shared with you a sample planning grid. So it's really an easy format to fit in your jam sessions. That's a Google Doc, so do with it what you want. And then also a sample staff meeting checklist. What I discovered was that, there's a lot it doesn't change the fact that there are a lot of balls in the air. It just sort of streamlines where those balls are going as you're juggling for RE each Sunday morning. And so having a checklist that you make sure yourself and your faculty are taking care of during the week so that you're prepared for Sunday. So that's what that checklist is all about. You know, make sure that you've got your room set up, designed and ready to go, making sure that you're looking ahead to the month ahead, making sure that you have all of your materials lists in place. So, you know, it's very basic stuff, but it's something that I had to create for SpiritJam specifically, and thought I'd share that with you to save you a step.
Great. I'm going to stop sharing my screen, and we have, let's see, 5 or 10 minutes, or maybe less.
But we can have about 5 more minutes. We have some questions here. What spaces do you use to hold your jams? Are they spaces that you can keep set up for SpiritJam?
Mine was.
Mine are not.
Okay.
Okay, so it can be done either way. That is good to know. Are your SpiritJams written up so that they can be published and shared?
Yes, I have the Google Docs. We did the same kind of Google Doc planning. Here's the Sunday program. You know, Spencer, are you bringing the rope from your Army Reserve place so we can do the this and that? And I have some, but it's hard to know what your themes are. That's the trick.
Yeah, I will share something that can be helpful in putting together jams. The Tapestry of Faith curricula are all searchable by theme, as is Worship Web. And some wonderful people went through each activity in each session to figure out the themes of that. And so you could just pull one 15-minute activity off of Tapestry of Faith that fit with a particular jam, and use that. You can do that with any printed curriculum as well. But if you're searching for a particular theme with theme-based ministry, when it's online, it's a lot easier to find it.
Yeah. And don't forget, those co-creator labs are when you're going to create those together. And I think you don't want to miss that creative piece.
That's the part for me that's been so thrilling, actually, about SpiritJam is having that collaboration with other people who are excited to be teaching and who have their own creative ideas, things that I would never have thought of on my own. It really is this kind of synergy of energy and passion for working with people of all ages that makes it really fun. So I answered that question and said, no, I mean, there's nothing publishable that comes out of the SpiritJam planning process. It's much more organic than that. Although it could be moving, it could be if someone wanted to take all of those notes and ideas and fit them into a curriculum. But what I love about SpiritJam is that it's not a set curriculum. It can change and grow and develop and looks
absolutely
like, yeah,
absolutely. Now we have 2 questions here, both of which could be very long answers. So I wonder if we could do short answers for them. I wonder if that's possible. One is, I'm curious how this has impacted UU identity development in the congregations.
Well, the matrix wants us to cover UU core stories. So that's how we captured certain things, like letting go. We told the story of Thomas Murray and Thomas Potter and
John Murray. Yeah,
I've mixed those up. And you know how he had to let go of his aspirations to be a minister when he lost his family, and then anyway, so we aren't specifically saying, okay, now this is a UU Identity Month. I have to tell you, my minister teased me no end because I'm a curriculum writer. I've written curriculum for 10 years, 30 years. And she said, so you threw out all the curriculum you wrote, Katie? And I said, no, we bring it in. It's part of that matrix.
Another question is, I'm sorry, Katie, would you like to
I
say
was just going to say, what I have seen is the excitement and energy that kids have for coming to church on Sunday morning has really increased. And just as Katie said, those core stories are easy to incorporate in your jam sessions. So it's, they're all sitting right there. So, yeah.
Great. We've tried doing a Spirit Jam structure this year, and the thing that I've noticed is that our kids with anxiety or shyness really struggle with having choice. Do you have any suggestions for that? They preferred last year's classes where the strict structure helped them to have a protected space and voice.
We noticed that our introverts were under stress in Spirit Jam. And what we did as a faculty was to try to take those individuals under our wing and not just say, who wants to go to what? And this huge group of children would push and shove their way to a certain jam. Instead, we would find ways to gently release the children. We'd say, reflect on what choice you might like to do first. And then check with your friends. And then let's get up. And the first people who are wearing orange make their choice, so that it wasn't quite such a extrovert program. Spirit Jam is a program that's easiest for extroverts. And that's a very good question. I'm glad you brought it up. I think it means that those teachers who are going to be with those children every Sunday that they come are going to get to know them, and the introverts are going to get to know their teachers as people who care about them.
Well, I would like to share my gratitude with you, Katie Covey, and you, Katie Seipert, and all of you for participating today. Very much appreciate your time with us. Do you have any closing thoughts you'd like to share, Katie Covey?
I am just grateful that you all are thinking about something, thinking about creative ways of doing religious education, whether it's going to be Spirit Jam or workshop rotation or traditionals. I think this is what our children and our families need right now, is people who care about religious education. And whether you take pieces of this and pieces of that, we all reinvent whatever our certain congregation needs. I just am glad that you attended and glad that you're thinking about this stuff.
Thanks very much, Katie, and thank you everyone for being here. This is, it's been fun to talk about Spirit Jam. It's certainly been my passion for this church year, and seeing it come together and seeing the way that it has worked in our congregation has been a real joy. So thank you.
Good night, everyone.
Good night.
Yes, good night, everyone. Be well.